Hey everyone, happy Thursday. It's a beautiful fall day here on the East Coast, and we're joined by people from really around the world. There was registrations that came in from both here in the US, where we're based, but also from places in Europe. And even some are joining us in Australia and New Zealand, even though it's early in the morning. So thanks to everyone that's joined us. My name is Noah Barnett. I'm the growth marketing lead here at Cosvox. And I'm really excited today because we have the opportunity to host a variety of experts and have them share how we can basically raise more money during year end. Year end is one of those times of year when fundraisers really kick into motion. You've probably spent the last 30 days, if not 60 days, planning your year end fundraising campaign. And what we really want to do today is gather insights from some of these experts that have been doing this for collectively probably over 50 years collectively, if not more, and get their insights into how you can improve your fundraising campaigns this year end. As we go throughout the webinar, just some housekeeping items. If you have any questions that you would like to submit to our panelists while they're sharing during the discussion today, you're more than welcome to share those in the questions pane of GoToWebinar, or you can share them on Twitter using hashtag @Cosvox, hashtag NPLearning. And you can also tag @Cosvox, and we'll get those questions in as well. As individuals are still joining us, I just want to give you kind of an overview of our today's agenda. It's a little bit different than our other webinars if you've joined us in the past. We're going to focus most of the webinar in spending 30 to 45 minutes diving into a live Q&A session with our panelists. Before that, we're going to give you a quick overview of Cosvox. Then we're also going to be doing at 1:15 Eastern time, we're actually going to do a live product demo of Cosvox so we can show you how you can power your online fundraising with Cosvox this year. If you're interested, totally optional, but it's something that we always want to offer for those that want to stick around with us and take a look at how Cosvox can really help you power up your fundraising. So really the meat of this presentation is going to come from our panelists. I want to briefly allow them to introduce themselves. So we have a variety of people from across the industry, including Beth Cantor, who's an author, speaker, blogger. If you haven't read her blog, I would highly recommend it. Beth, welcome. We also have...
Great to be here.
Yeah, no, we're excited to have you, Beth. And I know I've been a follower. I worked in nonprofits for 6.5 years before I joined Cosvox, and have been a huge fan and benefited a lot from your writing. And I know many of our other guests have as well, or many of our other participants today have as well. We also have Barb Perel, who's the vice president at Avalon Consulting. Welcome, Barb.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We also have Daniel Buckley, who's a senior strategist at Big Duck, which is a consultancy in New York.
Hello. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. And Nancy Schwartz is also joining us. Hello, Nancy.
Hey, so glad to be here. Nothing I like better than brainstorming with some of the most creative minds I know on how to make the same old so much better.
Absolutely. We hope we can do that after or with today's insights. So thanks for joining us, Nancy. We also have Allison White. She's the vice president at Graham Pelton Consulting. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you. I'm excited for the discussion today.
We have Pamela Grow, who's a consultant, writer, coach. She has the growth report, does a lot of various things throughout the nonprofit space. Welcome, Pamela.
Hey, thank you, Noah. Welcome, everybody, and thanks so much for coming out of your busy day to be here today.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also have our last but not least panelist is Samantha Ferguson, but I don't think your last name's Ferguson anymore. Is that correct?
Yeah, I actually got married earlier this summer, so I go back and forth between Ferguson and Anderl. It's not officially switched yet.
Excellent. Well, she's the senior director of demand generation and really just is on the marketing team at Campaign Monitor, which many of you might have used or have seen emails from. So they help power email marketing. And so she's going to help dive into those questions specifically.
Yeah, happy to be here. We help plenty of nonprofits send out their emails to reach their fundraising goals. So happy to have this chat.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us, Samantha. So before we dive in, I just want to give an overview of who we are. We have a lot of we do a lot here at CauseVox, but really, the biggest thing we do is, we're an all-in-one online fundraising platform you and your donors really love. When we started 6 years ago, we really wanted to focus on creating a product that helped you do online fundraising, but also something that was enjoyable, easy to use, and something that you could do without IT or a designer. But it's also creating an experience that your donors will love as well. And it's something we pride ourselves with here at CauseVox. We allow you to easily launch campaigns. Are also perfect for any type of fundraising campaign, especially year-end fundraising. And then really our biggest thing is we promote people-based fundraising. And what that means to us is allowing your supporters or empowering your supporters to tell your organization's story to their friends and family. And so we help you do that with our peer-to-peer fundraising platform here at CauseVox. So I know many of you didn't come on to hear me talk about CauseVox, and so we're going to go ahead and dive into the panel discussion that we have today. But before we do that, what would be helpful for our panelists is to really know who's on today's webinar and what role you play in the organization that you serve. So if you don't mind answering, we're going to use that throughout as a guiding post to how we approach questions in the Q&A. Are you in fundraising? Are you in development, marketing, communications, leadership positions? As I'm looking at the polls coming in, it looks like the majority of people are in fundraising and development roles, which is not surprising. And it's something that we see quite often, is that those roles are the ones that are really thinking about how you can make year-end fundraising more effective, how you can connect with your donors. So we're thankful to have all the fundraising and development staff on today's webinar. We also have a lot of executive directors and leadership at nonprofit. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking time to be a part of this and to learn how you can really lead your organization forward this year end. And we have a lot of marketing and communications folks. And so it's great to have all of you. Thank you for giving us that information. It'll be very helpful to our panelists as we dive in. So we're going to go ahead and really just dive into the panel discussion. But before we do, one quick note is you submitted questions previously, but if you have any questions or you want our panelists to dive into something further that they mention and some of their answers, please submit that in the questions pane of GoToWebinar, and we'll try to get to as many of those as possible throughout or at the end of the webinar. And if we don't get to any questions, we'll follow up with you after the webinar to dive into those answers with you. So we're going to go ahead and dive into our first question with our panelists. And this question is probably best fit for Nancy Schwartz and Barb, but we kept getting in various different ways the question, how do I make my year-end appeals really stand out? How do you create year-end messages that matter? Barb, any thoughts on this question?
I would say, and I think this is related to another question, but making sure that your case for support stands out is probably the main thing. And it's not as sexy, but it's super important. In a lot of ways, this is accomplished, especially in email, is through telling a really great story that represents your mission. People will understand stats and numbers, but really focusing on the people or the animals or whatever you're helping to do to make change, that is what's going to resonate with people, and that's what's going to stand out amongst all the other noise that's happening at your end. Another way to also make sure that you're standing out is to speak to people where and who they are. Using your segmentation to make sure you're communicating with major donors differently from your lower dollar donors, or speaking to your monthly donors in a slightly different way to acknowledge that they've given you reliable support. And then where they are, how are you speaking to folks on social versus email, making sure you're speaking to them in the language that resonates with each community. And of course, making sure that you're emails and your landing pages and your donation pages are mobile optimized and responsive so that you can reach people on December 31st as they're about to head out to a party that they can give easily on their mobile device.
And Nancy, you've helped lots of nonprofits craft their messaging strategies. So how have you seen nonprofits really stand out at year end and really make those messages that matter? And another question that came through was, is there just too many requests? Like, even what Barb mentioned, how do you stand out in the inbox or in the mailbox?
Yeah, great question. From the message / organizational brand point of view, I'd say yes, you want to make your year-end appeal stand out, but you need to do so in a way that is authentic, that is you, who you are as an organization. It is not the time to try on a new personality. And also graphically and verbally consistent. That is, it's going to be something that's easily recognizable, both visually and when it's digested or heard, as coming from your organization. Very much agree on focusing on your wins, on your people. Of course, thanking your donors. That has to come front and center. Segment so that you can reach in a way that's most relevant to them. But I would suggest you can really stand out by going beyond giving history, the platform you're using, demographics. If you have any indication, and I hope you do, on what your donors want, what's important to them, at an emotional level, at a values level, that's what you need to connect on. And that's very different from most year-end appeals, and frankly, most fundraising in general. There are too many requests coming in at your donors, not only in the final hours of the calendar year, but all the time. It's just more competitive, frankly, than ever at year end. And we're talking December 31st or earlier in Q4. You got to do it. You just got to be there. A few ways to push through beyond what I've already mentioned. They're looking at where you can zig when others zag. What can you do that's just a little bit different? Make sure you give to others so that you get other appeals, and you kind of build a tickle file of ideas you can pull on that you think work. And most of all, make it short and sweet so that people can get it and respond in an instant. Excuse me, must be my voice changing.
Not a problem at all, Nancy. I think your insights are exactly right. We've seen that hold very much true with our customers here at CauseVox. I think your stress on authenticity is really important. But a few people that are on today's webinar also asked, we have a broad scoping mission, like a public library, and we help in so many different ways. Or on the opposite scale, people said, our cause isn't sexy, like we do water research or we're a senior center. How can they really effectively convey their messaging and appeal at year end?
No, this is Nancy, directed towards me?
Yeah, if you want to start, and then anyone else on the panel that wants to dive in after Nancy comments, more than welcome.
Sure. Well, I just have to tell you, Noah, and everyone else, that the most frequent, or one of the most frequent things I hear from organizations is, we are so complicated. We have so many diverse programs and services that we just have the hardest time talking about us. I hear that from so many organizations. So whether that you're a huge human service organization working throughout the state of Massachusetts or a public library, it's vital that you find one common theme that connects all those whys. It's really not why, it's really what your value or impact is. So what is the unifying factor? That's not really, to tell you the truth, a fundraising or communications issue. That's a programmatic issue. And if you find that things are indeed so disconnected that there is not one theme that's going to be relevant to your prospects and your donors, then you better go back and re-examine your programs. So I urge you to find it. When you talk either about an organization with a broad scope or one that's less sexy, quote unquote, seniors, or I forget the other one you mentioned. What was the other one, Noah?
Water research.
Water research. You know, I'd focus again on the emotion to your prospects and donors. So for seniors, although we know a lot of seniors are donors, I'd focus on like your mom, or so you know they're okay, let's say. So you know they have a rich life. Something like that, where you really drive at the underlying emotion, not talking about descriptively about what you do. On the water side, you know, beyond the fact that, as we know, you know, everybody has the right to water, but personalize it in a way that a prospect or donor can relate it to the individuals they care about, their friends and families. And that's how you forge a very strong emotional connection that's most likely to spur giving.
And Daniel, at Big Duck, you guys help nonprofits craft their messaging as well. How do you guys approach this challenge, or clients that may seem as though they are too broad or too unsexy?
Sure. Well, at Big Duck, we work on communications and fundraising campaigns, but one of our primary areas of focus is branding. And it's back to look at the organization's brand is often what we do to help organizations differentiate themselves during year-end fundraising time. One of the most central ideas within branding is the idea of a positioning statement, and what that is the one idea that you seek to really own in the minds and hearts of your supporters. And that may not be able to be comprehensive of everything that you do. Again, like Nancy said, if truly you're not able to come up with a single idea that you can own that can be applied or at least related to all of your programs, you probably have a programmatic issue. But just to help explain what I mean by positioning, the kind of classic example that we use here is the American Red Cross. When you put that name out to a group of people and ask them what they immediately think of, two things are going to generally be said. There's blood donations and disaster relief. So we imagine that the American Red Cross positioning statement would be something along the lines of America's premier disaster relief organization. Now, that doesn't encapsulate every single thing that they do. They do also have really, really great vaccination programs, but it is something that they've really owned, and all of their messaging, no matter what they talk about, supports or bolsters that idea. So going back to your organization and really looking at it and asking, what is the big idea that we truly represent, that people are really inspired by, can be a good place to start when figuring out how to make yourself stand out at year end or at any time of the year. To pivot to the question about organizations that may feel unsexy or maybe a little bit wonky, again, another way that you can look to your brand to help yourself stand out is by thinking about your organization's personality. You may be an organization that works to care for seniors, but your personality may be more gentle and comforting or passionate and active. So going back and, again, looking at yourself as an organization and thinking about what is our voice and how can I zero in on that in a way that makes me stand out from my peers can be, again, a very good starting point.
Yeah, and so I've just heard trends of kind of like staying authentic, keeping things clear, and being true to what your positioning is. Another thing we touched on earlier, and I would love Pamela to be able to comment on this, is the importance of telling the story behind the work you do. Pamela, how does story play into year-end fundraising specifically?
Oh, yeah, storytelling is just huge, and I really love the question that someone sent in. It was, I've been hearing a lot about storytelling and fundraising. Do you think that's still the driving tactic this year? And I'm like, Yes, yes, it's been the driving tactic since the beginning of time. Whenever I hear this question, I kind of think of this. I remember this Tony Robbins program that I took years ago, and Tony was talking about the fact that, and every training, somebody asked him to teach them something new. And he always says when he hears that question, he always knew that the person asking the question hadn't mastered the basics. Because storytelling is about as basic as you can get, and it's the most important thing in your year-end campaign next to your donors. It's just the best way of connecting. And I know that Nancy has a lot to say about this as well.
Here I am now that I am unmuted. Pam, thanks, a beautiful segue. I think that Pam is so on target in emphasizing, the immediacy and the emotional power of storytelling. At the same time, there's been such an emphasis on storytelling for a number of years now, and I think it's important that you strive to do it better. Do it better than you have before. There's so much great free content out there. I have a lot. Pam has a lot. Others as well on how do you craft a story that is going to be powerful, that will connect, and there's a real, a proven framework for it. So it doesn't work anymore, if it ever did, to just kind of put sort of loosey-goosey lame stories out there. Really, really craft them. Make them short, make them memorable. Because honestly, your goal with a story and why it has so much potential is that your prospects and donors are going to remember it and repeat it. So you don't only get that one-time hit, you get it again and again, and you extend your reach.
Exactly, and always bringing that story back to your donor and what their gift is making possible.
Exactly.
And Pamela, I think that's a great kind of segue into someone else's question. And they asked specific questions, so I'll read that. But I think it speaks to a broader issue. It says, should we play up our organization's anniversary, or is that to us instead of you? How does you play into crafting a fundraising appeal?
I like that question too, because even with your anniversary, you can always, of course, your anniversary is going to be all about you. One of my subscribers recently had their 100-year anniversary, and they just brought it all back to their donor. We're able to do this. We're able to be celebrating our 100th anniversary because of you, because of your support over the years.
And this is Allison. I'll jump in if that's okay. This question always makes me think kind of about reunions, right? We don't get excited about reunions for college or high school or whatever it may be because we've been out for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. It's because it brings us back to our college years, our curiosity about what student life looks like now, what the school is doing now. So it's about that connection. So I think it's only to us, quote unquote, us, if we make it that way. If we simply put out a message that says, we're 50 years old, 100 years old, and leave it there, that's not a compelling case for support. So I think to Pamela's point and Nancy's point about storytelling, it's just a platform to tell that story, to talk about what's happening now, what the organization looked like however many years ago. And it's really a nice platform too, or vehicle for tying together that past, present, and future. So I don't think we'll ever stop talking about us, but the making it about them, about the donors, is just telling those stories. And I would also caution against going to the other extreme, right, where we stop talking about us and all of a sudden our donors or our prospective donors are wondering what the heck our mission is, right, because we've stopped talking about us. But I think that's a really good question and one that I think a lot of people have.
And just as a practical example on that, I worked at a nonprofit that's celebrating their 25th anniversary this year. and they actually created kind of a detailed montage, almost in the form of a book, telling stories throughout their history that either related back to the partners that they work with internationally to implement the work, or the donors that have been key supporters as part of kind of this journey. And it was a reflection of the organization's values and why they do what they do, and reflected that throughout the piece, but also just told stories that kind of built the case for, their positioning too. And being able to say you're 25 years old, or, in Pamela's subscribers case, 100 years old, has value because you've been around that long. And so it builds up a profile of trusted authority. So that's just speaking from my personal experience.
And I'd love to jump in here too. This is Daniel, because I'd love to contribute a somewhat more contrary position on the anniversary question. There's obviously a lot of interesting communications that can be done around anniversaries, but I personally, at least, I've just never seen anniversaries drive significant individual giving. I have seen anniversaries and messaging around them work really, really well in certain contexts, like at events and galas, where people are really there to focus on you as an organization. And going back to the idea of reunions, which I think is a really, really interesting way to think about this, I would question if people are going to see themselves in your history as well as you might like. And to the question of, is it about us or is it about you? In general, I think it's absolutely both. And it is really important not to forget that it's about what you as an organization do and how your donor and your supporter fits within that, and how they are the hero that's going to drive action. So when looking to do a campaign around your anniversary, I would just stop and ask, is that the best issue that's going to truly inspire my community? Is there something else right now happening in my cause that my community is looking to? Is there something that's happening out there in the community to the people that I serve that they're really passionate about? And those might be the issues that are going to resonate more than an anniversary will.
And I think we've talked a lot about kind of the bigger picture and different approaches that you can take with really crafting your year-end appeal. But to get a little bit more tactical, someone asked the question, should my year-end ask be for a specific cause, like providing books, or to benefit the entire organization?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. This is Samantha. We've really found when we've seen nonprofits, whether they're sending emails or developing landing pages, people really respond best when there's one direct call to action and when they really know what they're donating to, right? So sometimes when someone just thinks that they're donating to a large organization or an organization, whatever its size, that can sometimes be daunting. They don't fully understand where their money is going or how it's benefiting those people. When you really let them know where every dollar is going and how that's going to benefit people on the other side directly, I think it really is more compelling and, encourages them to donate more.
Has anyone seen
Nancy? And
I'd
just like to, I'd just like to jump in. I agree totally, and I think we can, extend that out to the value of being specific. So I see a lot of fundraising messages that are very general, although a lot of organizations may not be able to narrow where the annual fund, the year-end giving is going to go. I think providing specific stories with details and photos does make that gift more, or what that gift is going to do, more tangible. And that's really important. Taking it from the abstract to the tangible.
And getting away from really how you ask or how you structure a appeal or messaging. Summer, and this question actually was repeated multiple times from our audience, was What works better for a year-end appeal? A letter, a marketing piece, an email, a card? Pamela, how do you think about this, or when you advise your clients, how do you approach this question?
Well, we typically go with a totally integrated approach where we're usually sending a lot of times what a lot of my clients and what a lot of our students are doing now is sending out kind of like a pre-appeal postcard, kind of like a curiosity piece that says something's coming before the letter, and then after the letter we've got the phone calls. It's after the phone calls you've got the email appeal, which of course is not just one email but a series of anywhere from 3 to 7 emails starting at the beginning of the month. Really warming up your donors and getting them engaged throughout the whole process.
Has your client seen integrated approaches work more effectively? Because some might see it as over communicating. There was some questions that were asked as, I don't want to exhaust our donors.
You know, I think we talk a lot about over communicating with our donors, but I don't see that at all. And I think we just need to focus on putting more joy, more donor love, communicating better. You know, there are certain organizations that I hear from on a weekly, sometimes on an every other day basis that I just love. You know, like Save the Chimps, like Mercy Corps, and it's because of how they communicate.
Barb, at Avalon, how do you guys approach that?
Yeah, I would second that it's all about your content. If it's stuff that people want to read and people want to consume, they're not going to mind how often you contact them. If it's something they want to know about. I also think it's about a mix of things. It's not just constantly treating your donors and supporters like they're ATMs. So there are times when you're going to hit them fairly hard with fundraising asks, but you got to mix it up with engagement opportunities, some education, getting back to them with how some previous campaign did. So you need to communicate with them like they're actual people. So I think that's really important to do. But I also think we also focus on making sure that our year-end strategy and all our strategies are integrated across channels, and that offers a really great opportunity. And the reason that you want to make sure that you're creating multi-channel donors is that we've found consistently that those are your best donors. The more channels they're giving through, the better their long-term value is for your organization. And so, it goes back to being where they are. They may get a direct mail piece, and if you have a specified URL on the direct mail piece, perhaps they decide to actually fulfill their gift by going online and contributing. Or they get the direct mail piece, but then they get an email that reminds them, and they go back and give through the direct mail. So having in multiple places and giving people opportunities to choose where they want to give and connect with you is really important. It also gives you options on how to allocate your costs differently. So for example, if you found that certain segments don't perform as well in the mail, or you have a limited budget in the mail, you can't send them mail, you have that opportunity to send them email or communicate with them in other channels.
And you're really getting into the whole idea of segmentation there. So could you speak to how you encourage nonprofits to look at segmentation when they're thinking about year-end campaigns?
Yeah, we tend to look at things and we do a lot of grids, and we sometimes call them the train wreck grids, where we do it on a large campaign basis for year end, but also over the whole year we look at it this way. So we look at our different segments of our audience and look to see what are they getting in each channel, and does that make sense, or are they not getting enough, or these people are only getting communicated with twice in a year. How can we change that? Do we need to change that? And that's, I think, something we try to look at all the time, and also make sure that as we're looking at that segmentation, okay, if everyone's getting this, typically year end is kind of everyone's on board, everyone's going to hear about year end. You know, even those folks that you maybe don't ask for money as frequently. So, for example, if you have if you have monthly donors, sustainers who, you know, give reliably every month, year end is a great opportunity to include them in a fundraising appeal you might not otherwise include them in. Ask them to give their 13th gift of the year, to give an additional gift to support your mission. So it's just thinking of different ways of selectively contacting your different audiences in ways that are appropriate for them.
And we had a kind of a follow-up question to that was, you know, we're a small organization. We understand that when you have a larger donor base, that segmentation is important, but does it really pay off? Does all the work to do segmentation pay off?
Can I take that one?
Yeah, sure.
Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Who was that?
Go
I
ahead,
don't want to
Pamela.
interrupt.
You're okay. And then, yeah, Pamela, you can comment, and then Daniel, you can jump in after Pamela.
Yeah, segmentation is huge. It's so worth the work. I point to this one a lot because it was my first experience segmenting, and it was my very first job in fundraising. We're talking 2001, and I had a tiny donor base. It was less than 500 people. I actually had an ED who purposely kept it under 500 people to maintain the free status of the database. But that's kind of another story. But I took that. We had about 499 donors, and I created 8 different segments. And we actually increased giving that year by 30% just from segmenting. And I find that that's often the missing link, because one appeal does not fit all. You can't really talk to your major donors and your first time donors with the same letter.
You definitely hit on a lot of the main points that I had in mind. Thanks, Pamela. This is Daniel, just jumping back in. I tend to think about segmentation in kind of 2 buckets. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can segment your list, you know, by donor history, by the relationship to the organization, by the relationship to the cause, by their interest. But I tend to see the value coming out in 2 different ways. When you segment by giving history, that allows you to target people based on whether or not, say, they are lapsed or they are an active or multi-channel donor. It also allows you to target people based on their giving amounts. And what that allows you to do is to see some very immediate results in your fundraising by allowing you to give different gift strings to different groups, as well as different messaging to those different groups that'll drive the levels of giving that are commensurate with the giving potential within those groups. The other ways of segmenting that have more to do with, I'd say, personal information about people, whether they are, say, a mother within a disease community or whether they are a volunteer to your organization. There was actually a recent report, I can't remember who came out with it, but that showed significant increases in activity for e-commerce organizations when they communicate based on the shopper's most recent experiences with the company. So that shows, and that was one of the first reports that I really showed that I was, so one of those moments that I was like, aha, there's finally good evidence for this, that if you communicate with people based on their relationship to you or based on a personal bit of information that's meaningful to them in the context of the cause, that's something that will, over the long term, they will recognize. It'll drive greater loyalty to the organization, and it'll also enable them to see themselves in the organization better, and will increase donor loyalty and giving over time.
Ooh.
And this is Nancy. Daniel, I love the way you said that. I just want to jump in on one, the flip side of segmenting. So if you don't segment and you try the one-size-fits-all approach, that's not a neutral approach. It's a negative, because when you come out with messages or a gift string or a teaser on the outside of an envelope or the wrong or an email subject line that isn't meaningful to the recipient, you alienate them. As humans, our greatest want is for connection. And when we're faced with requests or content that doesn't seem to have anything to do with us, it makes us want to push away, actually run away as fast as possible. So there's a danger of you're not only going to do so much better with segmenting, but you're likely to lose the folks you're already close to, those current donors, if you don't start doing it and doing it well in a rich way.
Ooh, good point.
And I think a lot of what you guys said, and we've even just spent 30 minutes talking about some of the complexities that go into planning year-end fundraising. And the thing we hear all the time is, we're a small organization, or I'm just tired, I'm burnt out, and how do I even get through this? There's let alone the strategies, but actually as a fundraiser, most of the people on the call are fundraising and development staff. How do you actually survive year end and keep a level head, or even encourage your team? And Beth, I kind of want to bring you into this because I know you're, currently thinking a lot about this, and you're about to release a book on this topic. Why was it so important to you to talk about this idea of burnout and self-care with nonprofits?
Oh, don't let me get started. But this really comes from my own experience and then talking to other nonprofit professionals. And I know everyone on this call and probably listening has been there, because we work in a field with limited resources and really passionate people who care about the work. And that can be a recipe for burnout. In my case, a couple of years ago, when I was releasing my second book, I really wasn't taking off, maybe too many cheeseburgers, sitting around, and self-inflicted overwork, as I call it, working nights and weekends, and thinking that was the way I was going to get through it. And ended up seeing my doctor, having cholesterol results through the roof, 399, if you can believe it. And the doctor said, if you just started to, walk 20 minutes a day, that might help. So I got a Fitbit, and I made a commitment to do it. And not only was I able to get my cholesterol results into the normal range, lose a lot of weight, I actually felt a lot better. But something else started to happen when I stopped using my computer keyboard as a lunch tray and actually left, and took a break from work. I was able to be really more productive and get more things done. And then I started looking around at the research and, the benefits of, movement at work, basic health, technology wellness, as my co-author, Aliza Sherman, who's an expert in, likes to talk about. And I started talking to other people in the field, and sometimes I get this response, when do you find the time? Isn't that a luxury? And it dawned on me that, this is really part of doing the work. And that led to this whole idea of a book on self-care as part of doing the work, and then also creating a culture of well-being in the workplace so we can all take care of each other. And that leads to better results. It's really interesting. The first line of the book is, somebody asked me, we're doing a design lab to get at why do we work ourselves so hard? And they said, why does something bad have to happen to people who work for nonprofits before they begin taking care of themselves? And then I started hearing story after story of development people losing their hair because of overwork, ending up in the hospital, having anxiety attacks. And I think underneath of this, it's that drive, the passion-drivenness. It's also that lack of resources and the scarcity mindset, which research shows leads to bad decisions. And I think also from the nonprofit's cultural end, it's, this culture of just get it done, and in some ways exploiting some of maybe the younger people who want to get ahead. And I think that it has to stop, and we really have to hit the pause button and start to make changes not only in our own behavior, but create these cultures. So some quick tips. I know the fundraising season is crazy, so try to make a little bit of time to make sure you're getting enough sleep, that you're getting some exercise, proper nutrition, and take breaks. Even if you're just walking 250 steps around your desk every hour, that'll sort of help reset your mind. Go for some walking meetings. Don't overwork yourself. Our bodies work on something called ultracadian rhythms, which are these 2-hour cycles. And then at the end of that 2-hour cycle, we lose our attention. Use that as a signal to just take a quick break. You'll be repowered. You're not losing time. It'll help you get further along. And try to have some other interests outside of the office. I know it's hard, but you'll come back refreshed.
And I think it is so important just being on both sides, both helping nonprofits and also being a part of one to see this. And Allison, when you guys work with clients, how do you even encourage them to set the proper expectations for their teams and even keep morale up during year end?
That's a good question. So I would say, obviously it looks different for every organization, and talking about this, it always makes me think of the smaller team, right? Where 1, 2, 3 people are trying to do everything. And I think one of the questions that came in was about, how do I add a campaign when we're short-staffed and, we're all just feeling a little burnt out. And so it made me think about how we do tend to turn everything into a campaign, right? It doesn't have to have all of the bells and whistles. So I always like to kind of start at the top, take stock of your goals, right? What do we need to raise? And hopefully this process started much, much earlier in the year, if not the year before. But what do we need to raise, and what is our capacity for doing that? So, people will get off of a call like this or a staff meeting or come back from a conference and think, okay, great, I'm going to add 3 more mailings or 3 events, add, XYZ. There are a bunch of things on that list, but that doesn't lead always to better results, and it's not realistic for every team. So taking stock of the goals and the capacity and then working backwards from that. So let's say, okay, as a team, our goal is to raise $50,000 over the next 3 months, right? For one organization, it may be 50. The next, it may be, 50 million, right? It can be different for everyone, but it's still the same process. So to take some bite-sized pieces there and to say, okay, so what are our vehicles for getting there, right? What does direct mail look like? What is the personal outreach? And to be really realistic about that. 10 mailings is not better than 1. 100 segments is not necessarily better than 10, right? Be smart, be strategic, and do what fits your capacity there. And then making sure everyone knows their individual goal, being able to measure progress, measure success. And then I think celebrating that success, not just after we all come back from the holidays in January after a crazy end of year time, but as those gifts come in, as a mailing goes out, as an event is finished, just taking that time to celebrate, even when you feel like you don't have the time to do it. It seems so simple and basic, but I think it goes such a long way in helping us keep going, staying focused, and remembering why we do what we do.
And I think that's just such a great reminder, especially when you said, after things like this, most people are on this because they want to raise more money this year end. And so we've already kind of gone for 45 minutes and only barely touched the surface of some of the questions that people had. But before we go, I definitely want to kind of circle back and give each of our panelists just the opportunity to share something that people are overlooking or something that really answers that question. How do I raise more money this year end? And so, Samantha, what's your final thoughts just as you've been listening to what we've been talking about and maybe something we haven't said yet?
Yeah, I think one thing that we really haven't touched on yet is we've talked a little bit about your team motivated, how to cultivate the right message, how to segment your list properly. But another really important thing is just making sure you have the right tools in place. Make it easy on your team. Make it easy for them to get things done. Make it easy for them to get things accomplished, whether it's building a landing page, building a form, printing something up. Just make sure that you have the right vendors, the right tools, and that you're enabling your team to be as productive as possible.
Pamela, any final thoughts?
Sure. I love the idea of warming up your donors, getting your entire team on board, thanking, and then thanks some more. One thing I've been doing for, 16 years now, whenever I start a campaign, I actually write my thank you letter before I even start working on the appeal. If I'm working on an e-appeal, I work on the email thank you. And just remember that you want to begin with the end in mind. And I really love what you just said, Allison, about, I'm hearing more and more from my subscribers and from some of the people I'm working with that they're finally approaching this end of year season this year, and they're not in a panic because they've already raised so much. And I also want to thank everybody for coming today, and thank you guys for everything you do, and thank this wonderful panel.
Absolutely, and I think that's a great kick over to Allison. Any additional thoughts as you've kind of thought about what we've already shared and what maybe our audience can kind of leave and take away with?
Sure. So I'd maybe say, pick your head up. So, take that step back out of the mailing list. And while that's all critical, remember the personal aspect. Don't forget the people that you need to call, the people that you need to meet with, some of those connections that have to happen before the end of the year too would be probably my parting thought.
Yeah, no, that reminded me of something I said to my staff one time, was that the more time you spend in the office talking to me, the less time you're talking to our donors.
Exactly.
Nancy, any final thoughts?
Yeah, there's been so much learning here, and I'm sure you all are kind of saturated, but I want to leave you with a couple of ideas. And play with them. You could dive in a tiny way now, and I think it's going to really pay off. If not year-end 2016, then year-end 2017. First idea is get in touch with sort of a representative small group of existing donors. Those are your folks that you know, of course, and ask if they'll be on a year-end advisory group for you, which would mean no more than 5 minutes of their time a week where you run something by them, ask for their input. Great way to get relevant feedback before you send, before you talk. Secondly, I urge you to make small gifts to as many relevant competitive and colleague organizations that you're up against right now, so that you get their year-end appeal. So much to learn, both on what to do and what not to do from other organizations. I think those two things are really ongoing strategies that will really enrich your fundraising campaigns, year-end and beyond.
Beth, I know you already shared a lot about kind of taking care of yourself and stepping outside and even just moving. Any other additional thoughts you could share with our listeners?
Sure. I sort of want to weave it all together from what I heard from my fantastic colleagues, really bright people here on this call. I learned a lot. So I think in the planning phase of your year-end, don't should on yourself. That is, don't feel like you have to do everything at 100%. Really right-size the work that's involved in the campaigns, or the number of campaigns, or the scale of them, to your organizational capacity. While you're in campaign mode, I guess from now on till the end of the year, try to make space for mini reflections. Stepping away from the computer, taking a few minutes walk. Even meditating or reflecting for a bit, because when we're in campaign mode, it's collaborative overload, back-to-back meetings, lots of email to do, and it really is helpful just to step away from that. And then I also want to pick up, I hear Pamela talk about writing her donors' thank you notes, and it made me think about how useful gratitude as a practice can be to make, to take care of ourselves. So not only, as Allison said, for your team to celebrate successes, but maybe if you're having some meetings, to-do meetings for your campaign as it's unfolding, maybe start with a little bit of gratitude and say how you appreciate other people on your team or appreciate certain donors. So that's my take on it. And thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. And I think, even just a practical application is we always start our development donor team meetings with going around for 15 minutes celebrating wins that they had with donors or doing that. So that might be a great activity for some of our listeners to do. Just ask what wins that you've had with donors or things to celebrate for your donors. Daniel, any final thoughts?
Sure. I'm just going to go for one specific tactic because it really bugs me that more nonprofits don't use fundraising light boxes at year end. And if you're not sure what a light box is, that is when you land on a website, you see the screen that you intended to go to, and it immediately kind of grays out and another window comes up. Sometimes you see this with surveys, special offers on e-commerce sites. And for nonprofit fundraising campaigns, it's often the third biggest fundraising component after direct mail and email. A fundraising light box often drives the most giving, and I just don't see it enough. I spent time at last December clicking around probably 1 million different nonprofit websites and was actually really surprised by how seldomly I saw it. If you're at an organization that you have direct mail, you have an email campaign, you should have a light box. And that's my plea for light boxes.
Yeah, I think we probably all have comments on different tactics to approach, but I think the takeaway there is just making donating accessible as possible, especially during year end. Barb, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I would second that, Daniel. Light boxes for the win. So absolutely, they're a great source of revenue at year end. You're just making it easy for people to give. And I think the other things that are that resonate with me too are kind of speaking to what Beth and Nancy had said about kind of being yourself and being you, and right-sizing your campaign to your organization. You can see a lot of what other organizations are doing, but maybe you're not a giant Humane Society or a giant American Cancer Society, or you're not the Obama campaign, and that's okay. And I think that's that authenticity is what you'll be rewarded for, that, not how flashy you can be. So. And thanks, everyone.
Absolutely. And a big thank you to you all for taking times out. I know this is a busy time, not only for nonprofits, but all of you who work tirelessly and dedicate your lives really to helping nonprofits have their work seen, supported, and shared. And so thank you all for taking the time. Thank you for those that stuck around. We went a little bit longer, but I think it was worth it. I think it allowed us to hear and dive deeper into the topics. As a general thank you to everyone that joined us on this webinar, we're going to be sending out the recording of this along with a link that you can use to connect with any of our panelists. We also are going to provide you kind of a new tool we've put together just to kind of help categorize and help you plan better for year end. So we put together a 60-day year end planning guide that we'll send you. We'll send you the PDF. You won't have to fill out any forms or anything like that. We'll send that over to you as just a thank you, and hopefully as a tool that you can use to be more successful during year end and help you raise more money. In addition, we always allow people to launch year end fundraising campaigns for free with CosVox. We allow you to fundraise with no monthly charges or anything like that until you at least raise $5,000 using our all-in-one fundraising tool. You can learn more about that, and I'll send you some more information in the follow-up as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. If anyone would like to stick around, I am going to share more about our product that we have here at CosVox And if you're curious on how maybe you could use CauseVox to power up your fundraising, please stick around. We'll just get started in just a few moments. For everyone else, thank you guys so much. Thank you to the panel. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week and one of the last days of September. Next week starts October.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. You guys have a good day. And for those that are sticking around, we're going to get started in about 1 minute. I'm just going to get a few things set up here on my end so that I can show you around. And outside of that, hope the rest of you guys have a great day.